Hello there, I'm Lyra, and it's so lovely to have you join me here on SpeakFlow English today. Have you ever noticed how some people just sound naturally confident when they speak English? It is not always about perfect grammar or a huge vocabulary. Often it is about how they present themselves, how they use their voice, and the subtle ways they navigate a conversation. We all want to feel that ease, that sense of belonging when we express ourselves. It is a wonderful feeling to know your words are being heard and understood exactly as you intend them. Sometimes we might hesitate or feel a bit unsure, even when we know what we want to say. That is completely normal. Building confidence is a journey, and every step you take makes a difference. One common thing I observe is that people sometimes rush their words. They speak very quickly, almost as if they are afraid to take up too much time. This can actually make it harder for both you and the listener. It can feel like you're trying to get the words out before you lose your nerve. Think about a moment when you're explaining something important at work. Perhaps you're presenting an idea to your team. If you speak too fast, your colleagues might miss key details. They might struggle to keep up with your pace. Instead, try a technique that confident speakers often use: the deliberate pause. It is not about stopping completely, but about giving your thoughts a brief moment to land. When you say, "I believe our new strategy," and then take a short breath before adding, "will significantly improve our market position," it changes everything. That little pause adds weight to your words. It shows you are thinking, you are in control, and you are choosing your words carefully. It is not hesitation, it is a sign of thoughtful communication. We can see this in everyday situations too. Imagine you're with friends discussing plans for the weekend. Someone asks, "What do you want to do tomorrow?" Instead of blurting out the first thing that comes to mind, you might say, and then a small pause before suggesting, "I was thinking we could explore that new art exhibition." This little and the pause give you a moment to collect your thoughts. It conveys a relaxed assurance, showing you are comfortable in the conversation and not under pressure. Another aspect of sounding confident comes from how we express our opinions and ideas. Sometimes we might soften our statements too much, using phrases that make us sound less sure. For instance, saying, "I just think maybe this might be a good idea," feels less certain than saying, "I am convinced this is a good idea." There is a subtle but powerful difference. When you are genuinely sure about something, let your language reflect that. Use phrases like "I am quite certain" or "I firmly believe." Consider a conversation about a new policy at your company. Someone might ask, "What is your take on the new work-from-home policy?" If you have considered it deeply and feel positive, you could say, "I am quite certain this policy will enhance productivity and employee satisfaction." This shows conviction. It shows you have thought about it. Compare that to saying, "Well, I guess it might be okay, perhaps." The second option sounds tentative. It does not convey confidence in your assessment. Of course, there are times when you are genuinely unsure, and it is perfectly fine to express that. You might say, "I'm still weighing the pros and cons," or "I need a bit more information before forming a strong opinion." That is honesty, not a lack of confidence. The key is to match your language to your actual level of certainty. Sometimes, confidence comes from how we interact with others' ideas, even when we disagree. It is easy to feel awkward when someone has a different view, but confident speakers know how to acknowledge another person's perspective while still presenting their own clearly. Instead of immediately refuting someone, try opening with, "I see your point," or "That is a valid perspective." This shows respect. Then, you can introduce your own thoughts smoothly. You might say, "I see your point regarding the budget. However, I believe we could find a way to make this investment pay off in the long term." Imagine a discussion about a book you both read. Your friend might say, "I really disliked the ending, it felt rushed." You could respond, "That is a valid perspective, and I can see why you might feel that way. Personally, I found the ending quite thought-provoking." You are not dismissing their feeling, you are simply adding your own. This makes the conversation richer and shows you are confident enough to hold your own view without invalidating theirs. We often hear the phrase, "I couldn't agree more." This is a fantastic way to express strong agreement with conviction. It is much more impactful than just saying yes. If a colleague proposes a solution to a problem and you feel it is exactly right, you can say, "That is an excellent suggestion, Sarah." I couldn't agree more. This strengthens the connection and shows your full support. It projects a sense of shared understanding and alignment. On the flip side, what if you need to express disagreement? You do not want to sound aggressive, but you also want your voice to be heard. Phrases like, "I respectfully disagree," or "I'm afraid I see things differently," allow you to state your position clearly and politely. For example, in a meeting, if a team member suggests a plan you think has serious flaws, you could say, "I appreciate your proposal, Mark. However, I am afraid I see things differently regarding the timeline. I think we need to allow more buffer time." This is direct, professional, and confident without being confrontational. Another sign of confidence is the ability to take your turn in a conversation. Sometimes, especially in group settings, it can feel difficult to jump in. You might wait for a long pause, but then someone else starts speaking. Learning phrases like, "If I could just add something here," or "May I jump in for a moment," can be very useful. These are polite ways to signal you have something to contribute. Think about a family dinner where everyone is talking excitedly. You have an interesting story to share, but the conversation is flowing fast. You could wait for a tiny break and then say, "If I could just add something here about my trip last week." This gives you an opening. It is about gently asserting your space in the conversation. It is not about interrupting rudely, but about finding an appropriate entry point. Sometimes you might want to lead a conversation or shift its focus slightly. Confident speakers often do this with ease. They might say, "What are your thoughts on X?" or "Let's discuss Y." This invites participation and shows you are comfortable guiding the dialogue. For example, if you are brainstorming ideas with a group and the conversation starts to drift, you could smoothly bring it back by saying, "Those are interesting points. Now let's discuss how we can implement these ideas." This helps keep things on track and shows a calm, guiding presence. When you are explaining something, using direct and clear language is key. Avoid unnecessary qualifiers that can make you sound less certain. Instead of saying, "It might be the case that we should consider," try, "We need to consider this option." The directness conveys conviction. If you're talking about a task you need to complete, saying, "I will ensure it gets done," is far more confident than, "I think I can probably get it done." Imagine you're talking to a client about a project deadline, saying, "You can count on me to deliver this by Friday," leaves no room for doubt. It expresses a strong commitment and reassures the client. Contrast that with, "I'll try my best to get it to you by Friday, hopefully." The second option sounds less reliable, less certain. Confident communication is about being clear and decisive when the situation calls for it. What about when you need to ask for clarification? Sometimes people worry that asking questions makes them sound less knowledgeable, but truly confident individuals know that asking for clarity is a sign of engagement and intelligence. They use phrases like, "Could you elaborate on that point, please?" or "I'm not entirely clear on what you mean by." This shows you are paying attention and want to fully understand, not that you are confused or incompetent. Let's say your manager gives you a new task. You understand the main goal, but a specific instruction seems vague. You could say, "Thank you for explaining the project. Could you elaborate a little more on the reporting structure for this particular task?" This is precise and professional. It helps you get the information you need to do your job effectively, and it shows you are proactive. It also helps avoid misunderstandings down the line. Similarly, if someone uses an unfamiliar term in a conversation, you could politely say, "I am not entirely clear on what you mean by synergy in this context." Could you explain it? This helps everyone. Sometimes, in the flow of conversation, we might realize we've made a small mistake or misspoken. Confident speakers handle this gracefully. They don't dwell on it or get flustered. Instead, they might use phrases like, "Actually, what I meant to say was," or "let me rephrase that." This shows self-awareness and control. Picture yourself in a discussion about a historical event. You mention a date, and then realize you got it wrong. Instead of panicking, you could simply say, "Oh, actually, what I meant to say was the early 1980s, not the late 70s. This is a quick, calm correction that keeps the conversation flowing. It shows you are comfortable with minor imperfections, which is a very confident trait. It shows you are focused on clear communication, not on being perfect. Part of sounding confident is also about how you handle interruptions. It happens to all of us. Someone might unintentionally cut you off. Instead of just stopping and letting them take over, you can gently reclaim your turn. Phrases like, "Excuse me for a moment," or "If you'll just let me finish my thought," are polite yet firm ways to do this. Imagine you're sharing an important idea in a meeting, and a colleague suddenly interjects with a completely different point. You could pause, then look at them and say, "Excuse me for a moment, I just want to finish explaining this part first." Then, once you've made your point, you can smoothly transition, "Thank you. Now, John, what were you saying?" This maintains your authority and ensures your point is heard. It demonstrates respect for both your own ideas and theirs. We often talk about the importance of intonation and vocal projection in English. While I cannot demonstrate those directly here, the words you choose and the way you structure your sentences can absolutely suggest them. When you use direct language, when you pause effectively, and when you connect your thoughts with certainty, you are already building a foundation for a strong vocal delivery. Your voice naturally gains strength when your message is clear and confident in your mind. One aspect that can make a huge difference in how confident you sound is to avoid too many filler words if they are not serving a purpose. Words like like, or, used excessively can make you sound hesitant or unsure. Of course, a few here and there are natural in conversation. But when every other word is a filler, it can dilute your message. Instead of filling silence with an try embracing a short pause. We talked about pauses earlier, and this is where they shine. That small moment of silence actually gives you time to think and gather your next words. It also signals to your listener that you are formulating a thoughtful response. For example, if someone asks you a complex question, instead of saying, "Well, I guess, like, the main point is," you could say, "Well, then a brief pause. The main point is that we need to prioritize efficiency." This sounds much more polished and assured. Another phrase that conveys confidence is "without a doubt." When you are absolutely certain about something, this phrase leaves no room for ambiguity. If someone asks you if a particular strategy will work, and you truly believe in it, you can respond with, "Without a doubt, this strategy will yield positive results." It is a strong, definitive statement that projects unwavering conviction. This kind of language is particularly useful in professional settings where clarity and certainty are valued. Imagine you're assuring a client about the quality of your product. You might say, "You can be confident that our product meets the highest standards without a doubt." This helps build trust and credibility. Speaking of building confidence, remember that consistent practice is key. Listening to natural English, like we do here on SpeakFlow English, helps you internalize these patterns. You start to notice how native speakers use these phrases and techniques in various contexts. It becomes less about memorizing rules and more about feeling the rhythm of the language. When you are ready to express your commitment or offer assistance, confident language can make all the difference. Instead of saying, "I'll try to help," which sounds a bit uncertain, try, "I'll make sure that happens," or "consider it done." These phrases convey a strong sense of responsibility and capability. For instance, If a colleague asks you to follow up on an important email, you could say, "I'll make sure that happens before the end of the day." This is clear and reassuring. It shows you are reliable and proactive. Or, if your friend asks for help with moving some furniture, you could respond with a cheerful, "Consider it done. Just tell me when." This casual confidence is very appealing. Sometimes, confidence is about how you initiate an offer or a suggestion. Instead of waiting to be asked or phrasing things as a question, you can be more direct. For example, if you see a problem that needs solving, instead of saying, "Maybe we should," you could say, "I recommend we take this approach," or "My suggestion is to do X." Consider a team meeting where a challenge has arisen. Instead of hesitantly suggesting, "Perhaps we could, look into a different software," you could confidently state, "I recommend we explore a different software solution. I've done some initial research and I believe option B offers better features." This shows initiative and a well thought out idea. It demonstrates leadership and a problem solving mindset. When you want to emphasize a point, you can use phrases that draw attention to it. For instance, "The bottom line is," or "What it comes down to is." These phrases signal that you are about to deliver a crucial piece of information or a summary of your thoughts. They prepare the listener for an important takeaway. Imagine you're explaining a complex situation to someone, detailing various factors. You can conclude by saying, "So, the bottom line is, we need to secure additional funding to move forward." This simplifies the message and highlights the essential point, leaving no doubt about your key message. It helps to cut through complexity and provide clarity. Finally, remember that authentic confidence comes from within. It is not about pretending to be someone you are not. It is about understanding your thoughts, valuing your voice, and then choosing the words and delivery that truly reflect that. You are already on your way just by paying attention to these subtle yet powerful elements of English communication. Keep listening, keep practicing, and trust in your ability to grow. You have got this.